Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for jumping on to PACAC's College Virtual College Exploration. We're excited to have you here, and I'm even more excited to introduce you to Dalton Lewis and Hampshire College, which is up sort of right smack dab in the middle of Massachusetts in an absolutely beautiful area. I'm going to turn the program over to him, but I will remind you to please, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A feature, not the chat feature, so that Dalton will be able to answer them for you. At the end of this, when I close out the session, there will be a survey that pops up with just 4 questions. It's pretty easy to take care of, but if you would do that, we would really, really appreciate it. So without further ado, Dalton, the show is yours, and thank you once again for presenting Hampshire College to us.
And thank you so much for the introduction. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being with me here today, despite the kind of distracting circumstances of what's going on in the news right now. My name is Dalton Lewis, Associate Director of Admissions at Hampshire College, and I'm also a Hampshire alum. So if you have questions about my experience as a Hampshire student, I'm happy to talk about that, as well as answering any general questions that you might have about Hampshire. So to get started, Hampshire is a small private liberal arts college in Western Massachusetts, a beautiful area, as our facilitator mentioned, with about 700 students. However, there are nearly 200 private liberal arts colleges around the country. So the big question for me when discussing Hampshire is always, what makes Hampshire different? In particular, I'm going to focus on 3 big things that make Hampshire different from other colleges and universities in the US. The first thing is the divisional system, our unique academic program that allows every student to design a personalized concentration to engage in interdisciplinary studies with the support of a faculty advisory committee, instead of picking a traditional major and following a preset list of courses. The second thing that really sets us apart are narrative evaluations. So when you take a class at Hampshire, you receive anywhere from a half a page to over a page of really detailed narrative feedback from your professor on how you did in terms of meeting the goals of that class, instead of a traditional letter or number grade. And the third thing that I'll discuss is the 5 college consortium. And we'll go into the details of that a little bit more in a bit. But through the 5 colleges, Hampshire students have access to nearly 6,000 courses, including graduate level courses, as well as 1,000 student groups and club sports teams. And I think it's also to highlight that as a result of this curriculum, our aim at Hampshire is to create lifelong learners who are equipped to challenge boundaries, ask questions, and take on the complex problems that are facing our communities and our planet. And I think it's more important than ever that we are educating our students to address these really complex and rapidly evolving problems that we're seeing taking place today. And then after these topics, I'll just give you a little information on the admissions process and financial aid at Hampshire. Now, before I go ahead and get started delving into those 3 areas that I mentioned, I want to show you a short video that gives you a sense, A, of the history of Hampshire and why it's so important that we were created when we were, and B, it's a useful kind of academic primer for understanding the curriculum that I'll describe in depth to you afterwards. So give me a moment to get into screen share. And enjoy.
Experiential learning, project-based learning, interdisciplinary studies, self-designed majors. You've heard these phrases before, or maybe even at another college visit. Many of them originated at Hampshire College.
If anything is going to make this community, Hampshire College, different from or better than any other college, it will be the willingness of the students to get involved. We want students who want to make their education more than they want to just take it.
In 1958, the presidents of Amherst College, Mount Holyoke College, Smith College, and the University of Massachusetts convened a group of forward-thinking educators to draft a plan for an entirely new college, rethinking the assumptions of traditional higher education. This college would represent the first major departure in undergraduate education in over a century. As a laboratory for innovation and experimentation, Hampshire's model would be student-driven and inquiry-driven. It would emphasize critical analytical skills, research, and creativity, not rote memorization.
The student is viewed as a vessel into which experts pour knowledge, right? And it's preset knowledge that's been pre-digested, and it gets poured into the student's head, and the student is tested on it, and if they get it, then we say, job done. It's pretty much dictated to you what you're supposed to read, what you're supposed to write. The Hampshire model is pretty much the opposite of that.
At Hampshire, students are taught how to learn. You are empowered to challenge the status quo, develop a deep sense of self, tackle complex, critical problems in the world, and be a force for positive change. You discover how your interests and skill sets can fashion a better life for yourself and others. As our founders envisioned, our students are uniquely prepared for the age of acceleration, a future where economies, industry, society, and culture are ever evolving.
There's something about the education here that if the student can claim it as their own and shape their own questions, choose their own faculty to work with, it leads them to have a kind of both humility about what they don't know and confidence to try things that look impossible.
Hampshire has been recognized by Forbes as one of the most entrepreneurial colleges in the United States, with 1 in 4 of our alumni going on to start their own business or organization. According to the National Science Foundation, we're in the top % of colleges whose students go on to earn PhDs.
I actually found my Hampshire experience to be harder than my master's in fine arts. So the rigor particularly my Division III rigor, was just as hard, if not harder, than my master's thesis. Using other people to help me sharpen my skills really, I think, pushed my thinking and my making and my writing forward.
We are a founding member of Colleges That Change Lives and are recognized internationally for leadership in innovative pedagogy, community engagement, design thinking, entrepreneurship, and sustainability. Recently, Hampshire won the American Ecological Engineering Society's Student Design Challenge. Our team, competing against graduate and PhD candidates, was the only undergraduate team, and they had all just finished their first year at Hampshire.
At any other school where you take a science class and there's a lab component to it, the results are already known. You're not discovering anything new. At Hampshire, all the work that we were doing was original research. The lab reports that you write actually matter.
At Hampshire, you're responsible for designing a customized program of study. In close collaboration with faculty, you'll build a concentration tailored to your interests, experiences, and aspirations. There are no departments. Courses are designed to cut across boundaries and tackle specific issues.
If you come from a background of taking a class, studying for a test, and taking that test, and that being the extent of your educational experience, Hampshire is nowhere near like that.
You'll build your education on questions that drive you, working alongside faculty as advisors, mentors, even collaborators. To mirror the natural process of learning, we organize your 4 years at Hampshire into 3 distinct stages of study, called divisions. The divisional system was designed by our founders as a scaffold to support students in creating a truly innovative self-designed major.
In Division 1, the first year, you're introduced to various ways of thinking, learning, and knowing, building essential skills for research, discussion, and exploration. In Division 2, the second and third years, you'll begin deep inquiry into your own interests and the larger questions that drive you. You'll make connections across disciplines through rigorous coursework and projects, independent studies, community engagement, and more. Division 3, the final year, culminates in a year-long project mirroring a master's thesis. You're asked to create new knowledge and better the communities around you.
You talk to any of the Division 3 students, and it's amazing to hear them talk about their work. They've had to think about it, they've had to guide it, they've had to create it, whether they're working with other people or just themselves. They've taken ownership of their education, and they've had to make decisions about why they're doing things and reflect on that.
Hampshire's whole model is based on the risks that are necessary to graduate from knowledge, the mere accumulation of knowledge, to synthesizing that knowledge into real understanding, figuring out what I needed, who I was, very Socratic, who are you? Who are you? And then figuring out how to become what I was supposed to become.
All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. Again, I think it's a really useful tidbit just to give you a sense of the importance of Hampshire's place as a kind of newcomer and an innovator in higher education. And also, again, a useful primer for understanding Hampshire's academic program, which is what I'm about to describe in detail. So give me a second to get on screen share once more. Here we go. So on this slide, I think the most important thing to remember, you don't have to worry about the very small text, but just to go over once again the fact that Hampshire doesn't have your typical freshman, sophomore, junior, senior format. Instead, it's divided up into the 3 divisions, Division 1 being your first year, Division 2 your middle 2 years, and Division 3 your 4th and final year. And I'll jump in and kind of break down each of the divisions to give you a sense of what that looks like for a student at Hampshire. So starting with Division 1, this first year at Hampshire is really just about exploration and figuring out what you want to do with the rest of your time at Hampshire. And that takes the form of 1 advisor who's assigned to you based on your interests, as well as 5 electives that you take, whatever kinds of classes that you want. We don't have distributional requirements for the electives, and then 2 interdisciplinary seminars. And I think it's important to highlight for a moment the importance of these interdisciplinary seminars because they're all focusing on really important, modern, and complex problems that the world is facing today. And each of these interdisciplinary seminars are actually taught by 3 or 4 professors in multiple areas of study. And as I hope you can see kind of the small text here, but the topics for this year are environments and change, which focuses on climate change, in and justice, or justice and injustice, which focuses on the Black Lives Matter movement and mass incarceration, media and technology, which I think kind of speaks for itself, and then time and narrative, which is focusing on the pandemic this year. And each semester of their first year at Hampshire, students are choosing between 1 of 2 of these. So in the fall this year, students are choosing between time and narrative and justice and injustice. And in the spring, they're choosing between media and technology and environments and change. So the idea is that in addition to these 5 electives that students are taking, they're also selecting these interdisciplinary seminars that are taught by multiple professors to give them a really transdisciplinary look at each of these very complex issues from multiple academic perspectives. In addition to these 7 courses that students take in their first year, there's also the campus engaged learning requirement, aka the CEL1 requirement, aka the get the heck out of your room requirement. So that's 40 hours, 20 hours of that, half of it is just partaking in campus activities and projects. So that could be joining a student group, joining a sports team, helping an older student with their research, whatever you want to do. The other half of that requirement, the other 20 hours, is community education that is focused on the building of intercultural competency skills. And that takes the form of workshops, seminars, webinars, and lectures that are provided to students on community education days. And during those days, all classes are canceled so that students can focus on these important learning experiences. So again, Division 1 is really all about giving students the space to explore different subjects and then also form community within these interdisciplinary seminars that they're taking. Another thing that students get exposed to, usually for the first time in Division 1 at Hampshire, are narrative evaluations. And as I mentioned before, when you take a class at Hampshire, you don't receive a traditional letter grade for that class. You receive this long format narrative feedback from your professors. And there are a lot of benefits to the narrative evaluation system, which I can speak to firsthand as a Hampshire alum. So I think the first and most obvious benefit of narrative evaluations is that you're learning so much more about who you are as a student and what you need to improve on. So let's contrast that with a traditional grade. Let's say you take a class and you get a B in it. That B could mean any number of different things. It could mean that it was a subject that you already knew backwards and forwards, and it was very easy for you, maybe didn't take that much effort to earn a B in that class. For another student, that B might represent a tremendous effort on their part. Maybe it was a subject that they really struggled with, and earning a B in that class was a big achievement for them. With narrative evaluations, none of these questions are in the air. When you get feedback from your professors, you know exactly what you did well and what you need to improve on. Another benefit of narrative evaluations are that they help students build the skills of self-advocacy and self-confidence, because when you get a narrative evaluation from your professor at Hampshire, The first thing that you're doing actually before you receive that evaluation is submitting a self-evaluation to your professor first. You actually can't receive your narrative eval unless you've already submitted your self-evaluation. So each and every course that students take, in addition to the work that they have to do, they're thinking about what they've accomplished in this class and submitting a self-evaluation to their professor where they can really talk themselves up and build that skill, once again, of self-advocacy. And then finally, another important benefit of narrative evaluations are that it really sets our graduates apart from other recent college grads when being looked at by prospective employers or graduate admissions officers. So instead of just 1 page or 2 pages of kind of lists of traditional grades, a Hampshire transcript is really kind of like a miniature book about you as a student and everything that you've done during your time at Hampshire. So it really makes our graduates distinctive. And just to give you a sense of how competitive our graduates are when it comes to postgraduate success, 65% of our alumni receive an advanced degree within 10 years of leaving Hampshire. And this actually puts Hampshire in the top 3% of US colleges in terms of advanced degree production. So again, that's about 2/3 of our graduates going on to receive advanced degrees within 10 years of leaving Hampshire. At the same time, not everybody wants to jump right into grad school. So our alumni have reported that 88% of alums land jobs or are in grad school within 6 months of leaving Hampshire. And finally, nearly 1 in 4, about 23% of Hampshire graduates start their own businesses or nonprofit organizations. So we're also a college that fosters entrepreneurial thinking. No matter what it is you're interested in doing, whether that's actually starting a business or creating an organization that's going to better the lives of others, or both. I think it's possible to be a social entrepreneur at the same time. Now, moving on to the middle 2 years at Hampshire, Division II. This is when, after you've had a chance as a Division I student to explore, now as a Division II student, you're going to focus in a little bit more and identify your concentration and explore that concentration in a number of different ways. So the first thing that you do as a Division II student is you actually pick your own faculty advisory committee. And I think this is really important to highlight because even at other small progressive liberal arts colleges, it's pretty rare that you get the opportunity to handpick your own faculty advisory committee. So you get to pick 2 professors from whatever areas of study you want to work with you throughout these 2 years. And you can change your faculty advisory committee during these 2 years if you want as well. And once you've identified this advisory committee, you work with them to draft what's called your Division II contract. And this is kind of your North Star document during your middle 2 years as a Div II student at Hampshire. So in the contract, you identify first your concentration, and that's 2 or 3 areas of study. No student at Hampshire is studying just one subject at a time. So in my case, for example, on my Division II contract, it was international relations, economics, and Asian studies. But you can pick whatever kinds of subjects you want to combine together. You also identify in the contract the kind of central questions that you're trying to accomplish by exploring these subjects in your concentration. And then finally, you map out the courses and other learning activities that you're going to pursue during this time. And I say learning activities instead of just classes because we don't want to limit your Hampshire experience to just the classroom experience, as important as that is. So during the Division II years, Hampshire students have to choose at least 16 educational activities. And to give you a sense of the wide range of options that can be encompassed within that, in addition to classes at Hampshire or at the other consortium colleges, which I'll jump into briefly, students can engage in research assistantships, internships, study abroad opportunities, field studies, internships, or independent studies, to list one that's not even on this slide. And just to give you a sense of how many Hampshire students take advantage of these kind of out of the classroom learning activities, 86% of our students complete at least one internship or research assistantship during their time at Hampshire, and 72% of students complete at least 2 of these kinds of activities. And this is another place where your faculty advisory committee becomes really important, because not only are they helping you identify the classes you're going to take and what your concentration is going to be, but they also help you identify these research assistantship or internship opportunities, whether through Hampshire, through the other consortium colleges, or somewhere else altogether. And the other big thing that they'll do during this time is help you identify research grant funding opportunities. And this is a really important resource for Hampshire students. Many students take advantage of the research grants that we have available to either fund their internships or research assistantships, or even to engage in field studies, which is where a student designs an independent research study and actually goes out for a semester and carries out that research in the place of a whole semester's worth of classes. And finally, the other important requirement to keep in mind during Division 2 is campus engaged, or rather community engaged learning, CEL2 as opposed to CEL1. And the big difference between this and the first year requirement is that now, instead of just joining campus activities and attending community education days, you're really diving deep into volunteer work, supporting the work of older students or theater projects, or engaging in teaching assistantships. So again, first year requirement, you're just getting involved with campus life, dipping your toes. In Division 2, with the community engaged learning requirement, you're really investing more of your time into bettering your community at Hampshire or the community surrounding Hampshire in whatever forms that may take. Now, during Division 2 is also when most Hampshire students take advantage of the 5-college consortium. And I think the video that I showed earlier gives a good sense of why Hampshire was created and the fact that we were created by the other 4 colleges in the consortium. But just to give you a sense of how much Hampshire students take advantage of the resources of the 5 colleges, the average Hampshire student takes 6 off-campus classes. And if you think about the fact that at Hampshire, the average semester is 4 classes, that's a lot of time spent off campus. That's about 3/4 of an academic year spent taking classes at the other consortium colleges. And 95% of our students take at least 1 class at the other consortium colleges. And if you look at this little map here, you'll notice that Hampshire is kind of right in the middle of all the other colleges, with Mount Holyoke College south of us, about 15 minutes, Smith College southwest of us in Northampton, about 15 or 20 minutes, and then Amherst College and the University of Massachusetts, Amherst, north of us in downtown Amherst, about 10 minutes up the road. So Hampshire is very much intentionally placed. Again, it was created by the other 4 colleges, very much intentionally placed in the middle of the other colleges. So we're kind of best set up geographically and logistically to take advantage of the resources of the 5-college consortium. And just to reiterate a little bit about those resources, as a Hampshire student, you have access to the nearly 6,000 courses offered by the combined consortium colleges, and that includes graduate level courses at UMass Amherst or at Smith College. In addition, there are about 1,000 student groups or club sports teams that Hampshire students can join at the other colleges. You can even use your Hampshire meal passes to eat at the dining commons of the other campuses as well. And it's also important to remember that connecting these campuses together is a free bus system. It's actually the 2nd largest free bus system in the country, second only to Disney World. Weird fact, but I think gives you a sense of the sheer scale of this bus system. They even have bike racks on the front of the buses. So between that, the buses and your bike, you can get just about anywhere within these towns pretty easily. And I think it's really important to think about the fact that this is a gorgeous area in a rural part of Massachusetts. So if you want to be in the countryside with great access to hiking trails, mountain biking trails, great places to get outdoors, but you don't want to be somewhere isolated, this is a great place to be, because there are tons of fantastic liberal arts colleges in the US that are a bit more isolating socially simply because of their location. Whereas Hampshire has all the virtues of being in a picturesque rural area without being too isolated, thanks to our friends in the 5 colleges. And to tie it all together, I'll talk a little bit about the Division 3 project, which is every Hampshire student's 4th and final year. So as a Division 3 student, you are completing a year-long comprehensive project that can take any number of different forms. And I think they gave you a good sense of what some of those projects might look like during the video that I showed earlier. But just to reiterate, we're talking anything from a scientific research study to a business startup, to a documentary, to an art installation, a dance performance, a novel, whatever you want it to be. Every Hampshire student has had a different Division III project, and they will always be different in the future. And this actually takes up most of your time as a fourth-year student at Hampshire. It's expected to take up about 3/4 of your academic time. In addition to the Division III project itself, the other big thing, or the other important requirement, is that you complete at least 2 advanced learning activities. And these can be a number of things. They can be advanced courses at Hampshire or at the other consortium colleges, teaching assistantships, internships that are approved by your faculty advisory committee, or independent studies, or of course a combination of any of those things together. So the idea is that these advanced learning activities you're undertaking as a Hampshire student complement the really advanced work that you're doing as a Division III student. And a couple other important notes to think about. Division III projects are really meant to contribute new knowledge to the areas of study that you've been involved with as a Hampshire student. So we want you not just to synthesize the knowledge that you've gained in your first 3 years at Hampshire, but to contribute something new that will be useful to others going forward in your areas of study. So for example, this allows a lot of our students in the sciences to engage in really groundbreaking research. 5% of our natural science students are published as lead authors in peer-reviewed academic journals. And this is a pretty unheard of statistic for most undergraduate colleges. The ability to get published in a peer-reviewed journal alone as an undergrad is a great achievement, but getting published as a lead author, that's really, really something to be proud of. And I think one of the many reasons that our students see so much success when it comes to applying to graduate programs. At the same time, students who are completing, let's say, a business startup plan or creating a nonprofit organization often find that their Division III projects take on a life of their own as well. And just to give you a sense of some of the Division III projects that originally started, or rather some of the successful businesses that originally got started as Division III projects at Hampshire. 7th Generation Home Products originally got started as a Division III project at Hampshire. Stonyfield Farms Organic Yogurt. Gary Hirschfeld, the founder of Stonyfield Farms, actually started working on his business plan for Stonyfield Farms as a Division III student at Hampshire. And another successful business founded by a Hampshire alum, or rather co-founded by a Hampshire alum, is Duolingo. And that was not Jose Fuentes' Division III project at Hampshire, but he started working on code as a Div 3 student at Hampshire that he eventually implemented into his work when he co-founded Duolingo a few years later after leaving Hampshire. So whatever students are doing for their Division III projects at Hampshire, it's bound to be something that they're excited and proud to show prospective employers and graduate school admissions officers when they leave Hampshire. So that's kind of Hampshire's academic program in a nutshell. Just to finish up with a little bit of information about the application process at Hampshire, a few things to keep in mind. We are a common application school, and we do not charge an application fee. And we have a test blind admissions process. So what that means is, as opposed to a test optional school, which gives you the option to submit or not submit the SAT or ACT, we don't look at the SAT or ACT whatsoever as a part of our application process. And back when we adopted this policy in 2014, we were in fact the only college in the US to be test blind. However, this year, for a number of reasons, there are now at least 64 other US colleges and universities that are also test blind, in addition to the over 1,600 colleges that have gone test optional. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. Some colleges have seen, of course, that it's important to not require these exams due to the restraints that high school students are facing in having access to these exams in the first place. So they're only adopting the test optional or test blind policies for the fall 2021 semester. But many other colleges have also adopted these policies permanently, or at least on a long-term basis. And a few reasons that they've done that and that we've adopted the test blind policy at Hampshire. For one thing, The SAT and ACT we found through institutional research at Hampshire simply don't indicate a student's ability to succeed at Hampshire. I think it's easy to see why. These are primarily multiple choice exams, and at Hampshire, multiple choice exams are just not an important part of our curriculum. Instead, we focus on writing, research, and project-based learning. And the other reason that we stopped accepting standardized test scores is that a lot of national research studies have shown that these exams are huge barriers to students who come from low-income families, to students who don't speak English as a first language, and to students who are in underserved school districts. So not only did we find that standardized tests just simply aren't useful for us, but we also realized that it would be more equitable in our admissions process if we stopped looking at standardized test scores altogether. And finally, we do a holistic application review, which basically means that we just look at everything as one big picture in the application process instead of focusing on grades alone. So we look at, and we also contextualize each application within what the student has been offered in terms of educational and extracurricular activities at their school. And to give you a sense of the specific requirements we're looking at, that is, of course, a current or completed high school transcript, a school report, and a recommendation letter from a student's college counselor, one teacher's letter of recommendation. And by the way, when it comes to those recommendation letters, especially this year, we are flexible about a student's ability to submit those specific recommendation letters. So if you need to sub out, let's say, a guidance counselor's recommendation letter for one from a coach or a mentor or a pastor, because your guidance counselor might not be able to provide that recommendation letter, that's okay by us. And then finally, a few optional requirements that students can submit: a writing supplement that's specific to Hampshire, a portfolio, and if a student wants to sign up for an interview, which of course all of them are virtual this year, that's another optional requirement, but we don't require interviews for students. And finally, to finish up, to talk a little bit about financial aid, we do require both the FAFSA and the CSS profile from students who request financial aid at Hampshire. That means more paperwork for you as a student and your family. But it also means that we get more information about your family's financial situation, which allows us to give you a more appropriate financial aid package. And 95% of our students at Hampshire do receive some form of financial aid. So it's important to think about the fact that we do give out a significant amount of financial aid, both in the form of merit scholarships and need-based financial aid. We do not have a separate application for merit scholarships. You're automatically considered for those as soon as you submit your Hampshire application. And then finally, Hampshire meets 95% of students' demonstrated need on average through financial aid. So again, we do our best to help students meet their financial needs when they're accepted to Hampshire. And if you have any questions about how that works specifically in terms of merit scholarships, in terms of need-based aid, and the types of merit scholarships that we offer, I'm happy to answer those questions in just a moment. And finally, follow us on social media, like, share, and subscribe. We have some pretty great content on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and a great YouTube channel as well. So that is it for my presentation of Hampshire in a nutshell. I am happy to answer any questions that might have come up during the session. All right, great.
Thanks very much, Dalton. I've been watching the Q&A box as well. And I don't know if you want to put your own information in there or as well. I know we can find you online because I just did.
Okay, great. So you found me online. Yeah, because I was going to say, it doesn't look like we've had any attendees for the whole presentation. So if you have my contact information, I think then we're all set.
So that was terrific. And as I said before, students who come on to the PACAC website, they can go ahead and take a look at the recording, and those recordings have been tremendously helpful. So thanks very much on behalf of PACAC for participating in the Keystone Virtual College Exploration. And I hope you have a great evening.
You too. Thanks again so much for your help.
Oh yeah, it was great to meet you, and have a good night.
Yeah, you too. Be in touch
Take
soon.
care.